Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So I want to make a video update on why I believe the cryptocurrency price has rebounded so significantly in the recent weeks. And of course, it's got to do with all the various events swirling around politics and finance right now. And I want to go into depth about what some of these things are so you can get prepared. So first, if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. I give daily updates on debanking and how to do P2P cryptocurrency trading, which isn't just a great way of making money, it's also a great way of being able to buy cryptocurrency anonymously and to use cryptocurrency for what its original purpose is, which is a P2P means of exchange. So let's get into the video. So the biggest reason why crypto is going up these days is because of what's going on in politics. Now, the first thing that I want to uh, explain to you is what's going on with Trump and Bitcoin. So Trump is coming out as the first president to openly endorse Bitcoin, and he's doing so in a big way by attending a large Bitcoin conference in Nashville. So we've never had a presidential candidate make it a part of their platform to advocate for Bitcoin. It's a really big deal. And for someone to, we've never had a president do it, a presidential candidate do it. So this is a really big deal. This is pretty much the highest endorsement Bitcoin can ever get. I remember when everyone was creaming themselves when Elon Musk was talking about Bitcoin back in 2021, and it was a reason for the price to go up very high because you've got a billionaire who has finally endorsed it. And this is during a time when a lot of billionaires, people that were very much into TradFi, had been throwing shade towards Bitcoin for years, and it hadn't really gotten much uh, endorsement by leading tech figures or leading financial figures. And then in 2021, you got to see things slowly change. Elon Musk being one of the most recent large figure in the world to openly endorse Bitcoin. And now that we've got a presidential candidate who's likely to become the next president openly endorsing Bitcoin, this is kind of as far as it goes as far as a vote of confidence goes. You don't really get any higher than a potential president of the United States um, endorsing Bitcoin. It's a huge deal, right? Now, as far as what Trump is going to say at the conference, it's not certain at this stage, although some of the speculation is causing a bit of hype, and I want to talk about what some of that speculation is. But first, if you just ignore that and just focus on the fact that Trump is endorsing Bitcoin, even if he just shows up in the audience at a Bitcoin conference and someone just takes a sneaky photo of him, puts it on X, that's enough to pump the Bitcoin price. But there's something more to this though, and I want to talk about like why this is such a big deal because a lot of people are speculating as to why he will be there and what he plans to announce. Now, I think some of these theories are a bit far-fetched, but I think it's worth discussing. And this, I guess, conspiracy theory about what's going to happen has actually received a bit of mainstream attention. And it's got to do with the idea that Trump could, in fact, use Bitcoin as a reserve asset to back the US dollar. Let's
And
see
so,
what
yeah, he's going to speak very positively about
CNBC has to
Bitcoin here
say.
at the conference.
Do you think that these favorable comments could go so far as to indicate that he'd be open to it being a reserve currency for the U.S.?
Yeah, so there were some rumblings of that on X this week. It could be something that's very difficult to get done, but it is possible. The Justice Department holds about 200,000 units of Bitcoin. So the United States is the largest holder of Bitcoin. And so they could easily just move that over to the Department of Treasury and start right there and have 13 billion worth of Bitcoin on the balance sheet. So it is a possible move. It just could be tough to get done. But what happens is the Justice Department, in holding these units of Bitcoin, they've been a random seller in the space. And so if they move from being a random seller at times, which could push the price of Bitcoin down, over to being a long-term hodler, well, that could be really good for the space and push prices up.
Now, personally, I don't know where this rumor exactly started. I know it started as rumblings on X, but it seems more that it's an idealistic, pie in the sky idea that doesn't really seem to have any basis in what Trump is going to do. I don't know where it's come from. However, that being said, it is a very interesting idea. Now, I want to clear some things up as well about what he said. the US government is not the largest owner of Bitcoin in America. There's larger hedge funds like Grayscale and BlackRock that own way more Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, what he said is true. This Bitcoin is owned by the Department of Justice. The reason why that is because many governments around the world, in the process of cracking down on criminal syndicates, end up confiscating huge amounts of Bitcoin. Many of these people deal in activities on the Silk Road, in the dark web. Many illegal crime gangs will store their money in cryptocurrency. And if the feds are able to get through to those people, they will end up with a huge treasure trove of Bitcoin. But many countries don't really have the wherewithal, to do anything with it. So it's just kind of sitting there. And they might make like little cells on the spot exchange, like this gentleman says, but for the most part, it's just sitting there. So if the U.S. government wanted to implement, something to do with Bitcoin, it already has the assets to do it. So it wouldn't cost anyone anything. It's just almost free money, and they'll just be able to utilize it, without any friction, which is really interesting. And what's interesting about this as well is that if the US does this, this would encourage many countries around the world to do the same thing, who at this stage don't really have very clear Bitcoin laws or regulations. What they do have, though, is huge amounts of money that they've confiscated from criminals. I know Hungary is a country that has enormous amounts of Bitcoin because of the money that they've taken from criminals. A lot of Eastern European countries like Russia, they've got huge amounts of Bitcoin. So if governments decide at any stage they want to get into the Bitcoin game, it's not going to cost their citizens anything. They don't have to go into their budget. They don't have to, create some kind of tax hike in order to be able to buy Bitcoin at spot exchange. They can instantly join the game with zero friction, right? So let's go on to the next thing. So Trump's going to let's just clarify, right? Trump's going to go to this conference, right? But that doesn't explain everything because he was going to this conference before. But why is the price going up now? So if Trump goes to this conference, but he loses the election, then ultimately these words would be meaningless because his ability to bring out change in the system is basically zero. Maybe he can be he can just be a figurehead, and talk about it from time to time. But for the most part, it would just be empty words. So it's the fact that the chance of a Trump presidency skyrocketing, that's actually what's causing the price to go up. So this is the meat, the fact that he is very pro Bitcoin, but the potatoes is the fact that his chances of becoming president has gone up in such a short amount of time. And from what I understand, he did have a lead on Biden for a while, but it wasn't like huge. It was close. I think he had like a bit of a lead for maybe the past 6 months, but for the most part they were neck and neck, at least as far as official polling is concerned. Now, if you're curious, on this website, what you're looking at, this is something called Polymarket. Now, Polymarket is how can you say, like a prediction platform, a betting platform. It's kind of like sports bet, where people go bet on horse racing, stuff like that. Except instead of horse racing and sports betting, it's for serious things like presidential elections, right? So you can bet on Trump winning or Biden winning, etc., right? And Polymarket is just a place where you could do this essentially on the blockchain. So you're trading these contracts with, smart contracts, right? And what's fascinating about Polymarket, particularly in this day and age, more and more people like myself are using these as a gauge for the likely outcome of different events, as opposed to using these traditional polls, right? Because the downside with polls is if you're trying to figure out who's going to win an election, right? One of the strategies someone might use if you're running for election is maybe you could potentially pay off people running these polls to make it seem like you're going to win. It would help demoralize your opponents. People will think that you're going to win. It helps create a self-fulfilling prophecy. So there's a potential that polls aren't as accurate as one would believe. But on a betting market, the reason why it can be considered more accurate is because you can think about it like it's the condensed opinions of all these people around the world with different thoughts, different ideas, different perspectives, and then they've put their money on the line. So I want to give you a quick analogy, right? So there was a science experiment where the people running the study had a jar of jelly beans. There was a couple of hundred of them, and they would go to a number of people. It's like a few hundred people, and I'd ask each of them to estimate how many jelly beans were in the jar, and whoever got the closest number to the real number was the one that would win the jelly bean. So everyone's got an incentive to give as accurate of a guess as possible. Now, of course, there were people on the on the opposite sides of the bell curve, where some people would overestimate how many jelly beans are in there, and some people would underestimate how many jelly beans are in there. But the people doing the study found remarkably that the average of everyone's guess combined together produced a remarkably accurate result that was very close to the real result, right? So there's something about the hive mind in being able to deduce information that a few people can't, or one person can't, right? So everyone's got different ideas, different perspectives, and then on top of that, they're incentivized to give the most accurate prediction they can because their own money's on the line, and if they are successful, they will ultimately win money. So that's the reason why a place like Polymarket is really valuable to predict what the real odds of an election would be. So as you can see at the top, Donald Trump's got 64% and Kamala Harris is way at the bottom. And it wasn't always like this. Trump and Biden were neck and neck for a long time. I think for a while, Trump was a little bit ahead. But ever since the debate, Trump just started pulling out more and more ahead, and he got a huge advantage after the debate. People were already calling it back then, but that was quite premature. After the attempted assassination, though, Trump seems to have become like a superstar. Like he seems to almost have become like a one of the most famous people to ever exist in the past 7 years. Cult of personality status. And it just his chance of presidency just absolutely ballooned after this, and Biden was probably the best chance the Democrats had. Kamala Harris is much less popular, and there might be other people waiting in the wings, but it seems that there's a lot of conflict within the Democrat Party about who they're going to put up. So the most recent event, which happened only 2 days ago, which was Biden stepping down, made the possibility of a Trump presidency. It's like more than a landslide at this stage. It was already kind of a landslide when it was running against Biden. Now Biden stepped down. It's extremely unlikely that I think they're going to win. Now, I mean, I don't really know. They could pull out like a dark horse at the last minute. Who knows? Maybe Michelle Obama. Who knows? Maybe Gavin Newsom. I'm not as familiar with the politics. But at the end of the day, because Trump is pro-Bitcoin, and the fact that he is now slated to be the likely presidential winner means that we're likely to have a pro-Bitcoin president, which at this stage it's the highest endorsement. There is no other higher endorsement that you can get. The president of the United States is kind of like the king of the world. Let's just be honest, like figuratively speaking. And for him to come out and to be pro-Bitcoin, even if he just said that and it was just lip service, that alone is enough to cause prices to go up. And if he does decide to take this further and actually do something with his pro-Bitcoin leanings, maybe he decides to make things a little more easier in terms of Bitcoin regulation. Maybe he endorses it in regards to I don't know. I didn't even know what it could be. If you have any ideas, you can leave a comment below, right? So that alone is a big enough reason for the crypto price to go up. So the idea, though, that Trump might make a Bitcoin a reserve currency, I think it's a little bit far-fetched. However, at the same time, in a video that I most recently made about the $1 million narrative in regards to why Bitcoin could potentially get to $1 million next year, or if not next year, in the coming years in the future, is got to do with the fact that Bitcoin over time will be considered a more serious way of how can I say, a better has a better use case than fiat currency, and not just by us plebeians, not just us who have been holding Bitcoin for years and years, but by the highest powers in the land, like the president. And there's this theory that I've heard going around Twitter, and it's a very interesting idea, is that if it, at some stage Bitcoin becomes a reserve currency, um, it becomes how can I say, endorsed by America or some of the other great powers. Like imagine if it was China or maybe the EU or whatever. It would encourage so many other countries to do this to do a similar thing, simply because it's now popular to do it. And one of the things I think is very interesting as idea. What's going to happen when countries decide that they're going to print fiat currency out of nothingness in order to buy Bitcoin? Now, El Salvador at this stage is the only government in the world to make Bitcoin a legal tender, right? They technically have, you have to understand, they technically have the ability to print money out of thin air and buy Bitcoin, right? Now, I think that's not just it's not so much that it's unorthodox. It's unethical. I don't know if that's some kind of thing that the president would do. But it wouldn't surprise me if there were countries all over the world who are already kind of corrupt, who are already not really serious about their citizens, and maybe they're already in a bit of a death spiral, economically and financially speaking. And maybe you just start with like a few African countries, just like, imagine it starts off with Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe prints off, trillions and trillions of dollars of notes just to buy Bitcoin to put in its own treasury, and maybe it does something with it. Maybe it does it to help the country, or maybe not. Maybe it doesn't do that, right? What's going to happen when Bitcoin is institutionalized at the top levels of countries, right? What happens when it's not just, maybe it moves from Africa, maybe it's Latin America, right? What happens when it's Eastern Europe? Maybe it's just, it starts off with banana republics, and then maybe and then it goes on to more developed countries, who which maybe the politicians decide, well, this is just a new brand of Keynesian economics, right? We're going to get rid of the old in exchange for the new. What's going to happen when that's the case? Now, that's a bit of an out there theory, but if you believe in the idea of Bitcoinization, where one day everything will, eventually go into Bitcoin, or maybe even gold, right? But if you believe in the idea of the death of fiat currency, the end of paper money that's backed by nothing, it goes without saying that Bitcoin is going to play a very important role, maybe even a leading role in this new ecosystem. And up the top, you might have Bitcoin, gold, you might even have some various, basket of, CBDCs, in a basket of currency by bricks. Who knows what could come in the future? But I think as individuals, companies, and governments ultimately all collectively decide, maybe at one stage or another, that they need to get their money out of money that is not backed by anything into something that will actually hold value. They're going to think of Bitcoin. And I think we're starting to see the rumblings of that. The question is, when are they going to decide that we might as well just start printing money to buy Bitcoin? And this is a kind of like a really end game scenario. And I don't think this is going to happen this year. I think this could happen years down the line. But it is something that's worth thinking about, because if it actually did happen where Bitcoin became a reserve currency, this is a huge signal to the rest of the world. And America being really the second country to institutionalize and endorse Bitcoin at the highest levels of government, it really would be a showing to the rest of the world to follow suit, right? And so time will only tell what will happen. And I want to just talk about just two more things, and these things are actually in some sense more important than the things that I'm talking about, because they're much more specific to the Bitcoin price, based on the inflows and outflows of ETFs. So as we can see to the left, when they started, there was a lot of inflows, huge inflows. However, it was actually matched a lot of the time by Grayscale selling. Now, I don't know. Who knows why? There's a lot of conspiracy theories floating around as to why Grayscale, who is one of the real pioneers of buying Bitcoin, institutionally, in exchange for really BlackRock being, a few others, but mainly BlackRock coming in and swooping in and buying Bitcoin. It's a very strange scenario. I don't really understand why they did that. But as you can see towards, in January, it was quite matched. And the inflows, started to really outdo the outflows. And then in March, they were fairly equal, but there was still a little more inflows and outflows. But then in March, those inflows stopped. Grayscale's selling pressure eventually crashed the market, and that's kind of how we got to here. I wouldn't say crash the market. I mean, come on, all-time highs in a we haven't really technically reached the bull cycle parabola stage yet, which is going to come next year. But the idea that there's already all-time highs, and I mean, we're at 60, 60, we're hovering around the 60s. We're just consolidating. But regardless, I know there were billions and billions of dollars of outflows going on. And as you can see, as we go to the right, as we look through onwards, if we start with May, those outflows have stopped. We had, a pretty decent June, and it's just kind of continued to crawl up over July. So that is definitely taking more and more Bitcoin off the spot exchanges. It's taking it off the OTC markets. And on one last final note, spot Ether ETFs are set to trade on Tuesday. Now, if I go back here, this is what happened with Bitcoin. Huge amounts of inflows from institutions into Bitcoin. What's going to happen with Ethereum? I don't know. What's interesting is that technically that's today, because I'm recording this video on it's a Tuesday in Asia, right? So pretty much it's happened. The price is actually going down, maybe because it's already been priced in. We're going to have to actually wait for institutions to start stacking in Ethereum. And it's not just that. The reason why the Ethereum ETF is almost as consequential, or perhaps even potentially more consequential than the Bitcoin ETF, even though the Bitcoin ETF was the front runner, it's probably going to get overall more volume than ETH because it's just a more pronounced crypto, is the fact that ETH ETFs are going to blow open the door for all these other ETFs, particularly Solana, and then who knows in the future if we could even get something like Doge or Shiba or some of these other coins. Maybe you get a Ripple one. So the ETH ETF is the doorway to so many other ETFs going in and getting real institutional money. And here's the thing as well. I want to make one final point before signing off. For the most part, most bull runs are about retail money. Bitcoin has been the plebs stock market for a long time, and really since the beginning of this year, crypto has really been in the hands of the institutions, and it's a double-edged sword. You've got BlackRock probably owning like 3-4%. Oh no, maybe not just BlackRock. I think it's all of these institutions. They own about 5, maybe even 6% of the overall Bitcoin supply. That's not good. I think there's problems with it. However, if we're just going to look at it from the greedy short term, the reality is that this bull run seems to be like it's going to be influenced by institutional traders, institutions. It's going to be BlackRock. It may even be governments, depending on what's going to happen over the course of this year. The people that are going to pump the Bitcoin price, you're going to have institutions. You're probably going to even have governments. And maybe later on you'll have retail, but I think retail isn't going to pump up the price as much as you think. And the other thing that gets me really excited and very curious about what's going to happen is that, like the price of Bitcoin's already going up so much. It's valued like, come on, like $1 trillion. Let me just get really, actually it's $1 trillion. I don't want to look it up right now, but it's about $1 trillion, right? And for me, I kind of thought, well, maybe the age of Bitcoin 10x's is over. Who knows, maybe 50 years from now, maybe it 10x's, right? But the idea of it 10xing within a year is kind of not going to happen anymore. If you look at the last bull cycle, it only went up by about 3x. So, but then it got me thinking, right? The past cycles all run on retail, right? The average person only has so much money to spend. It's unlikely that they could cause Bitcoin to, do another 3. Maybe they could do another 4x or something like that, right? But how do you get Bitcoin to like 10 or 20 trillion? It's not going to be through retail. The only way that something like that could happen is through institutions and governments. And that is the potential narrative that I see unfolding. It's just a potential narrative. But if we just look at all these ETFs, if you look at the governments potential exposure to Bitcoin, we could see institutions and governments FOMO more into Bitcoin, and that's how we can actually see Bitcoin possibly 10x, where this didn't happen in the past, right? If we rely on retail, it's not going to happen, but this time could be different. So we'll see what happens. So thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. Make sure to subscribe. And on a final note, I just want to talk about a big part of this channel. I don't usually talk about price so much. I'm usually here giving practical advice on how to use your Bitcoin currency, your cryptocurrency, which is something that I'm really passionate about. It's my belief that people should be using cryptocurrency for the purpose of debanking, and that means using your Bitcoin not just as a store of value, but actually using it to buy and sell things. There's a number of ways you can use Bitcoin to buy and sell things, right? You can check out my channel if you're interested in learning how to buy and sell things using cryptocurrency. But another thing you can also do with cryptocurrency is you can also use peer-to-peer cryptocurrency exchanges to buy and sell it without KYC. And if you're able to provide this kind of service to other people, selling cryptocurrency to other people or buying it from other people without KYC, you can actually charge a premium on that, and you can help the ecosystem of traders who want to buy cryptocurrency anonymously and without KYC. So that's why I want to invite you to sign up with local CoinSwap or HODL HODL. These are two cryptocurrency exchanges that I regularly advocate for, because these are places where they're non-custodial, which means you're not going to have an FTX situation where there's like a lot of malfeasance and the people in charge will steal all the money. You're not going to have a situation like that because it's non-custodial. They don't actually hold your funds. And secondly, there's no KYC to sign up. So if you go buy cryptocurrency or Bitcoin from a non-KYC exchange, your cryptocurrency is going to remain anonymous. Because if you have to buy Bitcoin from Binance and you give your KYC to them, ultimately that de-anonymizes your cryptocurrency usage. So I don't want to belabor this point too much, because I understand that most people understand why KYC isn't a good thing. Ideally, you should just be buying cryptocurrency without KYC. So make sure to use my referral link in the description down below for local CoinSwap and HODL HODL. And if you like buying Monero without KYC as well, you can use my referral link in the description below for BitValve and BitPapa. These are also two exchanges. They're custodial, but they don't require any KYC, and that'll allow you to buy Monero with without KYC. And yeah, Monero is also something I'm a big fan of. So thanks a lot for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.